All right, thanks everyone for sticking with us. We know it's been a long day, but we hope it's been an engaging day. For our last panel, we're going to invite to the stage Sophie Beren, CEO and founder of The Conversationalist, who is going to bring folks to the stage from the audience to talk about what have you heard, what do you hope for the future, what's next. And so if you could please give her a rousing round of applause, that would be great. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. Thank you, so cute.
Hi everyone, how's it going? I know we're at the end of our day together, so I promise you that if anything, this conversation we're about to have together will get us going and fired up, ready to leave today with some action. So I have to start just by asking all of you a quick question. Please raise your hand if you feel that something today, whether it be a panel, a perspective, a conversation you shared with someone during lunch, if you feel that one of those events helped to expand your echo chamber. Love it. Okay, thank you so much. You can put your hands down. And the reason I want to ask you this question is that so often we can come into a conference, hear a lot of speaking, but not know where to go from here. And I want to share a little bit about who I am and what I do and how I can lend myself and my skills to our final session of the day. So I am Sophie. I am the founder and CEO of The Conversationalist. And first and foremost, I love to introduce myself as a unifier. I feel like I was put on this earth to bring people together across differences, to truly see each other's humanity and bring the world back together. And in the work that I do at The Conversationalist, we are a nonpartisan educational platform for the next generation, Gen Z, to have conversations across the aisle that helps us break open and expand our echo chambers. And so much of what I do involves traveling the country and talking to young people about their points of view. And today, I want to make sure that I get to hear from all of you about how today's event helped you channel your own perspectives and opened your own echo chamber so that when you leave today, you know where to go from here. And in the work that I do, in traveling around the country, I'm typically holding a microphone, putting it in someone's face on a college campus, and today I want to put that mic in front of all of you. But before I do, I want to take 30 seconds for each of you to turn to the person next to you and share one moment today that helped challenge you. What reaffirmed maybe your own perspective? What helped expand your mind? What panel or speaker or conversation resonated with you most? And we'll take 30 seconds to do that. So start now. All right, if you haven't switched to the other person, switch now. All right, I know that was brief, but let's bring it back together, and I hope that we can continue these conversations after we leave today. So thank you all so much for sharing. I apologize for cutting that short, but I'm hoping that that will kickstart a conversation we're going to have for the rest of this session. All right, so I wanted to share a moment that really opened my echo chamber today, and it was during our lunch hour. So I know a few of you in the audience were there, but I was so lucky to host a session with all of the Gen Zers here today, and I walked them through an exercise to help expand their own echo chambers. I put them into groups of random people that they've never met in the room and encouraged them to share what they feel is wrong with the world today and what is standing in the way of us solving that issue. And I feel that what is so powerful today is that we have people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all ages, coming to the National Constitution Center to figure out where we go from here. And I wanted to reiterate how powerful I feel that young voices are. So often, we do not feel that we have a seat at the table and that these conversations are more about us than with us. And I'm so grateful that today I was able to include so many amazing young people in that dialogue to really figure out where we go from here. And like I mentioned on my talk show, POVs, which stands for Points of View by Gen Z, I get to interview people about their points of view. So I'm going to start bringing up people from the audience today to hear their takeaways. And if anything resonates with you, feel free to give some snaps so we can end this session together. So first up, we have Robert. Some snaps for Robert. All right. So Robert, thank you for coming to join us.
Absolutely.
Robert, please share with everyone today what you're finding as the main takeaway from the event. And come a little closer.
I came to this event hungry for hope. It's not just the political arena where there's a lot of incivility. And so there were so many points of hope in the event today. One that comes to mind is the interview this afternoon, the panel about the news networks. And there were some significant differences of opinion, but also significant respect. And we need that so much.
Oh, yes, we do. If you resonate with that, give some snaps for Robert. Robert, thank you so much for sharing. I think so many of us are leaving with that hope.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Sure.
All right, and next up we have Raj, who I met during our lunch session today. So I'm excited to hear how the conference really helped to expand his echo chamber. So Raj, come on over here and share with me and everyone here how today's conference helped introduce you to a new perspective.
Yeah, so I had a blast at today's convention. I came in with an open mind, ready to hear all about the various viewpoints and opinions from people all across our nation. Coming from California, which is traditionally a Democratic stronghold, we don't really hear as many opposing views as you would, let's say, here in Pennsylvania. And so it's important for me to meet with all of you to discuss issues that are important to all of us. So during lunch today, we were asked, what's one thing wrong with our country? And the most frequent responses were hyperpartisanship and division. And so that lets me know, as a Gen Zer, that we're aware that we need to alter the discourse in our country and bring the temperature down. And if there's one thing I truly believe in, it's that we have much more in common with each other than we do differences. And we need to remember that at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you for being here. Whew. I think we can all agree that there's a lot of hyperpartisanship and division in our country. So I'm excited to bring up Addison next. Addison, welcome to the stage.
Hi, thank you.
As you leave the National Constitution Center today, what are you taking with you?
So I came into this thinking a lot from my perspective that partisanship has always been and always will be. A little background on me. I'm from Michigan, which is a highly contested swing state. I'm from a swing district in a swing state. And for me, the first political election I can remember is 2016. So for a lot of us Gen Zers, all we've known, all we've seen is partisanship. That's just how it's been. But with a lot of the panelists talking about how it was, like with Reagan meeting with the Speaker of the House and being friends after 6 o'clock, it's really given me a perspective that there's been a past of nonpartisanship and there's still a way forward, and it's our job to help that way forward. So.
Ooh, absolutely. Addison, thank you so much. You can take it. Thank you, Addison. Okay, next up we have Christian, who is going to share his takeaway. And if anything's resonating with you, feel free to nudge the person next to you and share that as well. But Christian, thank you for coming. Share with me and everyone else what you are leaving with today after the unconvention.
Yeah, so one of the speakers that came out today, I believe his name was Admiral Stavridis, and one of the things he was talking about was not electing officials who don't care about your vote. And that also kind of translated to another talk that was happening today, with Alaska and ranked choice voting. And so we see the implications of ranked choice voting in Alaska, in Congress, by having Indigenous people elected in Congress. And so it just shows us that, when we're actually able to allow the people, to elect officials who... My apologies.
You're good. Take your time.
We're essentially showing that, the officials that we want to be in office are actually guaranteed to be in office. And so, everyone's voice is heard, not just the 8% out of one party, but the majority voice.
Absolutely. Christian, thank you for that reminder. Thanks for being here. Love it. Okay, next up, I'm so excited to bring to the stage Av. So Av, come on up here. I know you got a lot out of our most recent panel and a panel this afternoon. So Av, what are you taking with you as you leave today?
So thank you. Thank you for including my voice. And got a lot out of today, but I have to say the panel, when it was the former heads of MSNBC and CNN sitting right up here with Michael Smerconish, that really got my engine whirring, because they said a lot, but there was one thing that I think that was left out of that conversation that really got me thinking. I'm a former journalist. I was a journalist for 10 years. And what I see a lot of on talk TV or even talk radio is a news anchor interviewing somebody and they're spouting their opinions, and one person's opinion is opposed to another person's opinion. And it's all day long, all night long. Yes, no, black, white, red, blue, blah, 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 blah. And what I felt very strongly was the both of you kind of have it wrong in the sense that what we need more storytelling, just exactly what you do. We need to hear the voices of real people. We have enough talking heads shouting at each other and disagreeing with each other, because what we don't have enough of is the narrative journalism piece, where the journalist goes out and talks to people and writes a story based on what they hear, not filling in blanks based on what they already know to be the answers. The journalists will allow themselves to be surprised and hear things that they wouldn't have ordinarily thought of. So we need more of that. We need more storytelling. We need to hear from more real people, because I think at the end of the day, what we're going to find is everybody kind of wants the same thing. They want their kids to go to good schools, they want economic opportunity for themselves, and they want basic human rights and dignity. And if we hear those stories from real people, I think we're going to find out a lot of what my friends and colleagues have been saying. We have so much more in common. But we need to listen to each other. We need to be open-minded, and we need to hear each other. And we need to accept that there's a little bit of a mess sometimes, and we don't all agree, and that's okay. Anyway, so I got that out of that panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Av. That was great. Oh, a reminder that I think so many of us needed to hear. Raise your hand if you agreed with the sentiment that we need more storytelling of real Americans in our country. Love it. Thank you. You can put your hands down. Okay, next up we have Tatiana. Tatiana, share with us how today's event helped to expand your own echo chamber.
Today's event was powerful. It was so powerful. And when we first walked in, we walked in a little bit late. There was a little bit of issues with the bus, but we're here and we're grateful to be here. But when I walked in, I felt safe. I felt seen. And I was a little skeptical though, because when you attend events like these, you often question, well, what's the hidden agenda? What do I have to look out for? What do I have to keep my ear open for? But as I continue to hear the conversations, panelists like Nick from Unite, it helped me to realize that as a nation, we do have a lot more in common than we do have, differences. But also, coming from California, DC and Philadelphia, they seem so far. Political ideals and political events seem so much further. But when we think about January 6th, that was terrifying. I know I myself lost faith and trust in democracy as a whole, and I know a lot of my peers did. And now I know there's hope. I know there's hope, and the American ideal is something that we should continue to strive toward and strive to accomplish: freedom for all, justice for all, tranquility, peace. But also, we have to embrace new ideas and embrace there's a lot more that needs to be done. There's a lot more that we have to strive towards and continue to learn. The only thing constant is change, so we have to be open to change and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And today, it was powerful, and I know that there's hope for our future and our democracy our democracy will remain standing with people like my peers and like you all. So thank you all, and thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. That was great. Thank you so much for sharing. Awesome. Whew, that really resonated with me. We need to get comfortable with that is uncomfortable. So I wanted to actually turn to all of you with some of the time we have left to see if you had any takeaways that you wanted to share from today. Ellie right here has the microphone. So if anyone wants to share maybe how today helped to expand their own bubble or their own way of thinking, raise your hand and Ellie will come bring you the microphone. And say your name as well.
My name's Bonnie. I'm from California. I think the greatest thing about today wasn't necessarily the speakers. It was all of the people in the room. And actually, the highlight of my day so far are these younger people that have been coming up and are so well-spoken and so articulate. And if those kids represent our future, then I feel much better than I do normally about that generation. But I think the fact that people gave up a day of their life to come, and if we can do this annually, I think that this should be the first annual, and that Michael Simconish needs to do this every year with all of his collaborators, and I think that's how we'll build a stronger coalition to make things better.
Bonnie, thank you so much for sharing that. I definitely echo your sentiment. I feel very empowered by this next generation, so I'm glad that you echo that feeling. Thank you so much. Ellie, can you bring the microphone to this man here in the glasses? Thank you. And please share your name with us and what you're taking away from the Unconvention.
I'm Steve, and I'm from Landenberg, Pennsylvania, close by. My takeaway, I came in here in adamant opposition to open primaries, but some of the conversations about how the process works and doesn't work kind of opened my eyes. I'm kind of 50-50 on it now because I can see the benefit. And the leap is to trust the other side, that they won't game the system. The other thing is, if we do nothing else, we ought to draft the admiral to run for president.
Steve, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that, Steve. Thank you. Does anyone else want to bravely raise their hand and share a takeaway? Any other takers? Awesome. Well, if you end up having anything else you want to share with us, please do not hesitate coming up to me afterwards or anyone else from the Unconvention team. I think it's so important that we leave today with some call to action. And to me, I think the most important call to action is knowing how to continue these important conversations. Today, we did a lot of listening. Today, we did a lot of sharing. And I want to make sure that we can all leave with a better sense for how to better have these conversations that can sometimes feel incredibly challenging across the aisle. And as I mentioned, a lot of the work that I do, it's in the name of my platform, The Conversationalist. I've learned a lot over the years, though I may not be an expert. I've learned a couple of things along the way that have helped me navigate conversations across the aisle and when they've gotten heated. So I would love to share some with you today that hopefully you can practice on your way out. So when having difficult conversations, I think one of the most important things to begin with is a foundation. Just like any good relationship, to enter into a dialogue, you have to start somewhere. And to me, the most powerful foundation in a conversation is being able to set an intention for the dialogue. Raise your hand if you have been in a conversation before where you were not prepared for that conversation or it went awry and you ended up leaving heated or frustrated or a little bit frazzled. Whew, absolutely, thank you. You can put your hands down. The best way to avoid that fire before it begins is to start with an intention. Why do you want to be having this conversation to begin with? And what do you hope to get out of it? And though it may feel a little bit uncomfortable to voice that with your conversation partner, if you will, try to say that out loud so that you can level your own expectations as well as the other person you're speaking with. So number one, setting that foundation. The second piece that I'm sure we've all heard echoed throughout today is seeking to understand. Raise your hand if you've been in a conversation where you feel that the other person was only interested in sharing their point of view instead of hearing yours. A lot of hands. Thank you so much. You can put them down. I've been there countless times, and I think the piece that we can all practice here is going into that conversation with the intention to understand, to ask questions, to serve as a judge in a courtroom and get to the bottom of why someone believes what they believe before making any judgment or conclusion about that person. And I think when we do this, we allow the conversation to flourish as opposed to closing it off before it even starts. If we seek to open someone's mind instead of seeking to change it or bring that person over to your side, you're better equipped to really understand where we go from here. And I think a really good example of this is on the talk show that I host. I mentioned that I host a show called POVs, and on our pilot episode, we jumped right in with the topic of abortion. And I convened 2 young leaders who believe that abortion is a human right and 2 who don't. And we sat down and had civil discourse around that issue. And we went in with the intention very clearly of seeking to understand. Why do we believe what we believe? Where do our ideologies come from? And how can we better understand one another? And without setting any other expectation, we actually found that at the end of that dialogue, there was common ground. Without that expectation, because not every conversation will result in common ground, but when you create the right environment where you are seeking to understand, where you are leveling the expectations of the dialogue, you never know what you can uncover. And at the end of that dialogue, all 4 Gen Zers equally valued paid maternity and paternity leave, as well as doing everything we can to support women and other people who can conceive. And so I use that example to share that if you set your conversation up for success, you never know what can be uncovered. Which leads me to the next point. Whenever possible, when you're having dialogue that may get heated, try your best to speak from your own perspective. Let me poll all of you. Who here has also had a conversation where the entire time either someone was pointing to you as the blame, saying you did this, you believe this, as opposed to sharing from their own perspective first? Awesome, thank you for sharing. You can put your hand down. I've been there countless times, and I think another great ingredient to a fruitful conversation is being sure that you are sharing from your own experience and belief system that proves why you got to that belief. None of us can be true experts on every subject matter, and maybe it's the Kansas girl in me, but I think humility is one of the greatest ingredients in a conversation. And so with these ingredients in mind, I hope that as you leave today, whenever you enter into that next dialogue, whether it's on social media, whether it's with another participant on your way out, whether it's with a family member, a colleague, I hope that you can channel these tools into how we can better accomplish dialogue that can further the needle. And I hope that as you are leaving today, some practical, actionable ways that you can bring this into your own life include first seeking to understand why someone wants to vote. As we all know, the midterm elections are coming up. And oftentimes I feel that I'm always being told to vote or being told to share on social media that I voted without really understanding why I vote and what matters to me. And I think one of the most actionable things that each of us could take away in this room today is when you are thinking about voting, showing up to the polls, sending in your absentee, try to speak to the people around you, whether in the workplace if you're comfortable or whether at the dinner table, try to understand why people choose to vote. Better understand what matters to them, what drives them to the polls, and in those conversations, we can better understand our motivations, and I think when we uncover those motivations, we can see other people for who they are as human beings, which can lead to common ground. So that's number 1, uncover that why, especially as you're showing up to the polls. Number 2, this may sound silly, so bear with me, but who here is on social media? Got some head shakes. Okay, we got a lot of us on social media. I love social media. I think it can be an incredibly powerful tool, despite some of the divisive algorithms. And something that we practice in the conversationalist community is every time someone shares a perspective or an opinion, without jumping to a conclusion about that opinion or immediately reacting with a thumbs up emoji or a thumbs down emoji, we always react with the ear emoji. And I think this is something that all of us can take to even our email accounts, to our social media platforms, and when someone is sharing something with you, instead of immediately refuting that or jumping in with your own perspective, maybe try sharing that you hear that person first. And for us, sometimes reacting with that yellow ear emoji can speak volumes. So I would action that next if you're comfortable on social media. And lastly, as you leave today, I really hope that these conversations will continue to push you outside of your own echo chamber. And as someone who really believes in the power of young voices, Anya Dillard, who's a young activist in our community, recently shared with me that when she's in spaces or in conversations, she always asks herself, who and what is missing? So in your next conversation, whether it be with friends or family, with colleagues, try to take a moment and reflect on the environment around you and ask yourself who and what is missing in this dialogue. I think that's the best way to gauge your own echo chamber as it's forming in the moment. And when we ask ourselves the question of who and what is missing, we're better able to break outside of that echo chamber, seeking out new perspectives, whether it be on social media, whether it be in your own communities, on your campuses. That's the best place to start so we can push ourselves to include other people at the table, no matter their background, their age, their religion, their race, and better understand where people are coming from. So I hope that today, these are skills that you can walk out of the National Constitution Center with to practice these conversations, because the minute we break open our echo chamber, we're able to bring the world back together. And with that, I'm so grateful to have been a part of this event today, the Unconvention. I want to especially thank Blake McGill, who really made space for young people at this event today. And if you're struggling to navigate these conversations, as we all do, just remember that we are human. We make mistakes, but if anything, we're starting that dialogue, and dialogue is really where we can shift the world around us. And I want to leave you with one final quote before I leave us today, which is something I always like to ask myself when I'm finding myself in a difficult conversation. And that question is, how will I ever change someone's mind if I can't understand it first? So thank you all so much for having me. I hope to stay in touch. And without further ado, I'm passing the mic to our other hosts and partners. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're at the finish line. What a day, what a day. I've talked a lot today, and so I feel short on words, but really full of a lot of emotions. And just to share a couple of those emotions with you. One is humbled just to be on the stage. I've looked up to Jason and to Michael for so long and listened to them. United America is just proud to be here and to play a small role in it. The second is inspired, not just by what happened here on this stage, but in conversations with so many of you around this hall, especially the students and the young people. I mean, this is your future, and your being here just means a lot to absorb this and to hopefully take some action when you leave. The third, I would say, is grateful. Grateful for this event, but especially grateful for the staff that made it possible. Jason and I are up here, but it's really all the people in the tie-dyed shirts that you see. So. Just a big hand for all of you and your hard work over these many months. And the last is just hopeful. Hopeful by what we saw today, but then I couldn't stop, just keep looking out this window to Independence Hall and realize that no matter what's wrong with our democracy, our founders gave us the tools to fix it. So that's what keeps me going, and that's what I hope all of us take away from here. How about you, Jason?
Well, so we often talk about the question of whether democracy is resilient. You guys sure are. Thank you for sticking with this for the whole day. It means a lot to us. It's been a great day. And I think the question that we are talking about a lot off on the side now is, was this one and done? Was this the... That's what we thought too. It was not supposed to be a rhetorical question. But we really want to understand now, this is an ember of something that feels like it's really important to us. And it clearly is important to certainly all of you. We do not want to take you on a timeshare cruise where we start to follow up, with daily, but we are going to be staying in touch. I think we're going to be putting some things on the Uncon website. We're obviously going to be sending out a couple emails. we're going to probably, pulse each, email account a couple times, and then we'll stop bugging you. But we have some real ideas about keeping this going. I mean, the interaction that we've had, the input that we've gotten, even on these kind of lightning rounds, these weren't just for you. This actually helps us understand what the country feels like. And so we're going to see you as a continuing part of our organizations if you'll have us. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.